Hello friends, this is Hatim Rampurawala, and in this video we will revise, that is we will discuss the questions, that is illustrations and exercise of exercise part of chapter number 16, that is income tax authority. In this chapter we actually don't have any illustration as such, so we'll directly move on to the exercise part. Exercise part. In exercise part we have approx we have actually 9 questions. Let us start. Income tax authority. Question number 1. Rajesh regularly files his return of income electronically while he was trying to upload his return of the income for the assessment in 1920 on 31st August 2019. The extended last date, the last date of filing of the same, he found it extremely difficult to do so due to the network problem, and ultimately he become successful in filing of any return on only on 1 a.m. on 1st September, that is after the due date. The return contained a claim for the carry forward of the business loss of 51 lakh rupees. The circumstances was recorded in the letter delivered to the office of the Deputy Commissioner of the Income Tax on 1st September. During the normal office hour, Rajesh has made a request to the CBDT. So he has made a request to CBDT, and if we have to condone a loss, and if the loss is greater than 50 lakh, we have to it can only be condoned by CBDT. So CBDT for the contention of the delay in filing of any return, condonation of the delay in filing of return, discuss whether CBDT has the power to condone the delay in filing of any return of the income and permit carry forward of the losses in the given case. So if CBDT finds satisfied, so if CBDT is satisfied with the reasons, genuine reasons, so he will allow. What would be your answer if the return contained a claim of a carry forward of the business loss of 48 lakhs? So if it is 48 lakhs, so it will require, so the condonation of delay will require an approval of CCIT. We will read the answer. Section 119, that is, this section gives the power to the CBDT to issue any order. 119 subsection 2 clause B empowers the CBDT to authorize any income tax authority to admit any application of the claim for an exemption, deduction, refund, or any other relief under this act after the expiry of the period satisfied under the act, to avoid the genuine hardship in case of any class or a class of the cases. The claim of the carry forward of the losses in case of the late filing of any return is relatable to the claim arising under the category of any other relief under these act. Therefore, CBDT has the power to condone the delay in filing of any such loss return due to the genuine reason. The fact of the case are similar to the case of the Lodhi Property Company, this much of ITA, Department of Revenue, where the Delhi High Court held that the board has the power to condone, board, that is CBDT, has the power to condone the delay in case of any return which was filed late, where the claim of any carry forward of the losses was made in the return. The delay was only of 1 day, and the assessee had shown a justifiable reason for the delay of 1 day in filing of any return. If the delay is not condoned, it would cause a genuine hardship to the assessee. Therefore, the court has held that the delay of 1 day in filing of any return to be condoned. So court has held, in that case they had held to condone the delay. Further, the CBDT circular 915 has expressly clarified that the CBDT has can consider an application for the for claim where the amount exceed 50 lakh, applying the rationale of the above court ruling and clarification given by the CBDT to the case on hand. The CBDT has the power to condone the delay in filing of any return of Mr. Rajesh and permit carry forward of the losses of 51 lakh rupees, since the delay of 1 hour was due to the genuine and justifiable reason, that is network problem, while e-filing the return. However, if the claim for carry forward of the business of loss was 48 lakh rupees, then the principal chief commissioner of income tax, that is PC, PCIT, or chief commissioner of income tax, that is CCIT, has the power. So PCCIT or CCIT has the power to condone the delay if it is 48 lakh, because 48 lakh falls between more than 10 lakh and up to 50 lakh, and if it is only up to 10 lakh, that is up to 10 lakh, then it can be condoned by CIT as well, CIT also. Since the amount is between 10 lakh to 50 lakh, it may be noted that if the claim is less than 10 lakh, the principal commissioner of income tax or commissioner of income tax, as I said, CIT or PCIT, is empowered to condone the delay. The clarification is given in the CBDT circular 9 2015 dated 9/6/15. Question 2, examine the correctness of this statement. The jurisdiction of an assessing officer cannot be objected by the assessee. So there are various cases. It is where the return has been filed, where return has not been filed under such case. So in all cases we will see whether the jurisdiction of an jurisdiction of an assessing officer can not be objected, it is stated. So it is we can object or not according to section 124 subsection 3. An assessee can raise a question as to the jurisdiction of an assessing officer within the prescribed time limit as under. So when where the return has been filed under section 101, that is on or before the due date, within 1 month from the date of the service of any notice under 142 subsection 1 or 143, or before the completion of an assessment, or before completion of an assessment, whichever is earlier. Mm, so it is we can question the jurisdiction of an assessing officer in first case, that is if the return is filed on time. So within 1 month from notice received from the 1 month of the service of notice under 142(1) or 143(2), from that within 1 month, or before completion of an assessment, whichever is earlier. So it is like that, 1 month from 142 or 1 month from 143, or before completion of an assessment, whichever is earlier. That's it, or before completion of an assessment, whichever is earlier, where no return has been filed. For instance, if 1 month is crossing the completion of an assessment, so it can be latest by completion of an assessment in first case. Where no return has been filed, then within the expiry of the time allowed by the notice under 142(1), within the expiry of the time which is specified in the 142(1) or 148, that is income escaping assessments notice. In that also the expiry time would be given. So within the expiry time allowed, so 142(1), 148 for the filing of any return, or within the time allowed in the show cause notice issued seeking as to why the best judgment assessment should not be done, whichever is earlier. So three dates are there in this when the return is not filed. 142(1), 140 before the expiry of the time allowed under 142(1), 148, and 100 before issue of before the no, or within the time limit allowed in the or the time limit allowed in the show cause notice issued as to why the best judgment assessment should not be done as per 144. So in the earlier case where the return has been filed, so within 1 month from 142(1), 143 2, or before completion of an assessment, whichever is earlier. In second case where the return has been filed, so within 1 month, in this case it isn't 1 month, before the time expiry of the time limit allowed under 142(1) or 148, or the time limit allowed under the show cause notice issued as to why the budget and assessment should not be done as per 144. We're done with this two case. Then third, where the search is initiated under where the search is initiated under ma where the search is initiated under 132, or the books of accounts or books of accounts or any other documents are requisitioned under 132. So within 1 month from the date on which he was served with a notice under 153A or 153C, or before completion of an assessment, whichever is earliest. So the same time limit as in point 1, that is within 1 month from the service of notice under 153A or 153C2, or before completion of an assessment, whichever is earlier, where the assessee calls in question the jurisdiction of an assessing officer and the assessing officer is not satisfied. Okay, if he questions the jurisdiction and assessing officer is not satisfied, then he shall refer the matter for the determination by the he shall refer the matter for determination by the principal director general or the director general or the principal chief commissioner or the chief commissioner of the income tax or commissioner before the assessment is made. Therefore, in view of the above, so he can refer the matter to the following authorities. Therefore, in view of the above, the statement that the jurisdiction of an assessing officer cannot be objected is not correct, because we can object the jurisdiction of an assessing officer. So we are done with question number 2. The director general of the income tax, after getting the information that the Mr. M is in possession of an unaccounted cash of 50 lakh rupees. Okay, director general, after getting information that he is in possession of an unaccounted cash of 50 lakh, issued an order for invoking the power vested in him as to section 131 subsection 1a for its seizure. Is the order for the seizure of the cash issued is the order for the seizure of the cash issued by the director general of income tax is correct, that he has get in get he was got an information that he is in possession, that the Mr. Mogambo is in possession of an unaccounted cash. So by invoking the power, he issued to seize such cash, is whether it is correct. If not, does the director general of income tax have any power or any other power to seize such cash? So we'll read the answer. The power under 131 1a deals with the power of discovery and the production of an evidence. So deals with power of discovery, to discover and production of the evidence, and they do not confer the power of seizure of the cash of an asset. So power is different. Under 139, the power is the discovery power of discovery and the production of an evidence, and not the power of the seizure of the cash of any assets. The director general, for the purpose of making an inquiry of investigation relating to an income concealed or likely to be concealed by any of the person or the class of the person within his jurisdiction, shall be competent to exercise the power conferred under 139 subsection 1, which confines the discovery and the inspection, enforcing attendance, compelling the production of any books of accounts and other documents, and issuing commission. Thus, the power of the seizure of unaccounted cash is not one of the powers. So these all are the powers, which all powers under 139(1) confines to discovery, to discovery, inspection, enforcing attendance, compelling production books of accounts, issuing commission, a normal civil court powers. Thus, the power of the seizure of an unaccounted cash is not the one of the power conferred to Director General under 139(1)(a). However, 132(1), the Director General has the power to authorize any additional director or additional commissioner, that is AD or AC or JD or JC, to seize money found as a result of search, if he has the reasons to believe that the person is in possession of an money which represent wholly or partly the income which has not been disclosed under disclosed clause C 132(1), and therefore the proper course open to the Director General is to exercise his power under 132(1) and authorize an officer concerned to enter the premises where the cash is kept by Mr. Mogambo and seize an unaccounted cash. So here comes two concepts. First is 131 1 and 1a. In that, in 1a the powers are the powers are production and discovery and the production. In 131 1, he has the power of inspection, inquiry, and enforcing attendance, compelling production books of accounts and other documents, and issuing commission. These all are the powers, but he has not got a power to seize any cash or seize any asset found of which he is of the knowledge that has been unaccounted or undisclosed. So but in this case, if he has reasons to believe, but he can order the search, that is he can authorize any person in sense ACAD or JCJD etc. to seize any money found as a result of this search, because he has the power to authorize any person, and that person can enter search and search the premise, then can seize the unaccounted cash. So he can order the search, but only if he has reasons to believe that the person is in possession of an unaccounted cash, proper reasons to believe, then only the search can be initiated and he can order. So this power is given under 132(1). So in the question it is since it is given that he has exercised the power, so whether it is correct or not, so it is not correct. And what else power has been given to the Director General is that he can authorize any another officer under 132 subsection 1, that is search section. Question number 4: the premise of the Ganesh were subjected to the search under 132. The search was authorized and the search warrant was signed by the Joint Commissioner of the Income Tax having the jurisdiction over the assessee. Consequent to the information of his possession, search was authorized by this search was authorized and the warrant was issued by the JC of Income Tax having jurisdiction over the assessee. Consequent to the information in his possession, the assessee challenged the validity of the search on the ground that 132(1) does not empowers JC to authorize the search under these act. So he had a challenge, but actually JC can authorize the search. Decide the correctness of the contention raised by the assessing officer. It is wrong. We will read the answer. It is the simplest answer. Under 132(1), the income tax authorities listed therein are empowered to authorize. Under 132(1), the income tax authorities listed therein are empowered. So the authorities name, that which authority can authorize, are given under 132(1) itself. Empowers to authorize any income tax authority to conduct the search. So they authorize an other income tax authority. The authority empowered to issue the commissioner includes additional commissioner. Authority empowered to issue authorization include additional director, additional commission, joint director, joint commissioner are empowered by the CBDT to do so. However, the JC can issue the warrant of authorization only if he has been specifically empowered to do so by the CBDT. So the JC has the power since it has been mentioned in 132(1), but JC can do only when when the JC has been empowered by the CBDT. Therefore, if only if the JC has only if the JC has not been specifically empowered by the CBDT to do so, the contention of an assessee would hold good. So the contention that of the assessee that he cannot authorize, JC cannot authorize, can only be held good only if the CBDT had not specifically empowered the JC. Okay, just give me 1 minute. Under 132(1), JD has the power and DG has the power to authorize additional commissioner to authorize any additional commissioner, additional director, joint commissioner. Okay, done. So we are done with fourth also. I was just confirming the sentence in line with question number 3. Question number 5. There are 9 questions, so we are left with 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 5 questions, and it will be quickly done. Examine whether the information regarding the possession of an unexplained assets and the income received from the Central Bureau of Investigation, that is CBI, information received from the CBI, a government agency, can constitute an information for action under 132. No, just by the information regarding the possession of unexplained received from the CBI cannot constitute an information for an action under 132. He should have proper reasons to believe. We will read the answer. 132(1) authorize the search and the seizure can take place if the authority in consequence of any that authority in consequence of an information in his possession has the reasons to believe that the person is in possession of any money, bullion, jewelry, valuable, or any other valuables and things, and these assets represent either wholly or partly income, wholly and partly income and wholly and partly income or property which has not been or would have not been disclosed by such a person. So all those property, bullion, jewelry, money, bullion, jewelry, article thing which has not been disclosed by such a person for the purpose of this act. In the absence of such an information, a search cannot be validly authorized. In the absence of such a case, that if you don't have any reasons to believe, so search cannot be validly authorized. Now the apex court in this case, UOI ITR 80, has held that a mere intimation, so if it is just a mere intimation by the CBI that money was found in the possession of an assessee, which according to the CBI was undisclosed without something more, does not constitute an information. So just intimation by the CBI that the person is in found with an uh, money which was found in his possession, and which CBI thinks, which according to the CBI is undisclosed, cannot be the reasons or cannot be constitute any information within the meaning of 132. So it does not fall within the proper meaning of information itself, on the basis of which the search could be issued. Consequently, the Supreme Court held that the search conducted on the basis of the assessment made pursuant to such a search is not valid. Perfect, it is not valid. In the course of any search under 132 in the month of July 2019, a taxpayer makes a declaration under 132 subsection 4 on an earnings of an income not disclosed in respect of any. So he had not made makes a declaration. Okay, in search in the month of July under 132, a taxpayer makes a declaration. He himself makes a declaration under 132(4) on the earnings of an income not disclosed in the respect of previous year 1819. Okay, in 1819, that is previous year, he had not disclosed certain income. Can that statement save the taxpayer from a levy of penalty if he is yet to file his return of income for the assessment year 1819, or say previous year assessment year 1920, or say previous year 1819? So that previous year's due date haven't come, so he is yet to file his return of income, and he had disclosed in the month of July 2019 during the search operation the income which was not disclosed. So in this case, if four conditions are satisfied, that is, he admit, he disclose in the return, then he actually files the return and he pays the tax. So the penalty of that undisclosed income, basically it is 60%, so it will be reduced to 30%. So we'll read the answer. Since the search is conducted on or after this is the condition, that search should be conducted on or after 15/12/2016, that is 15th December 2016, and and the return is yet to be filed year 1819, the penalty would be as follow: 30% if disclosed income is admitted. First is admitted during the course of the search statement furnished under 132(4), and the assessee explains the manner in which such income is derived. So first is admitted, then he explains the manner in which it is derived, then third is pay the tax together with an interest, just pay the tax and along with an interest, if any, in respect of any undisclosed income, and furnishes the return. So four things: admit, explains the manner, third pays the tax with interest, and furnishes the return for the specified previous year, declaring such undisclosed income on or before the specified date, that is due date of filing of an income, or the date on which period specified in the notice, or disclosed income on or before the specified date, that is the due date of filing of return on which the period specified in the 139A expires, as the case may be. What actually they have given is, and furnish the return for the specified previous year, declaring such an undisclosed income on or before the specified date. So before due date expires in the 153A, or penalty at the rate of 60% in other cases. Okay, therefore even if the taxpayer furnishes the statement in the 132(4), penalty at the rate 30% of an undisclosed income for the previous year would be attracted under 271 AAB. Under AAB, minimum at least 30% would be attracted. So 30% if all these conditions are satisfied, and 60% if not. मीटिंग करवानो सिस्टम एकदम गड़बड़ है ना, एकदम We will continue with question number 7. Cash of 25 lakh rupees was seized on was seized on 25 lakh rupees was seized on 12/9/2019 in search conducted as per 132 of the Act. The assessee moved an application under 27/10/2019 to release the assets. Release release such cash after explaining the source thereof, which was turned down by the department. The assessee seeks your opinion on the following issue. Can the department withhold the can withhold the explained money? Yeah, they can withhold. It is on the discretion or on the satisfaction of the AO or the PCIT, principal commissioner, CIT or CCIT. And if yes, then what, to what extent and up to what period? So they can, if they are holding also the explained asset as well, so they can hold up to the period of completion of an assessment, and after setting off of liability, uh, up to what period. So this was the basic concept, basic provision. We will read the answer though. Actually, and this application is valid for the explained money only if it has been issued within 30 days from the end of the month in which search was conducted. The search was conducted in September. From the end of the month, 30 days is 30th October. So actually application is still valid, but now it is on the department whether they are releasing or withholding. So answer, the provision 2 section 132b(1) provides that where the person concerned makes an application to the assessing officer within 30 days from the end of the month in which the assets was seized, to release the assets, and the nature and the source of an acquisition of an asset is explained to the satisfaction of the assessing officer. If it is explained to the satisfaction of assessing officer, then the assessing officer, with the prior approval of the principal chief commissioner of the income tax or the chief commissioner of the income tax or the principal commissioner or the, so PCCIT or CCIT or PCIT or CIT, release the assets after recovering of any existing liability under the Income Tax Act out of such a asset existing liability. Does not includes an advance tax payable. Does this existing liability does not include the advance tax payable, uh, as such an asset or the portion thereof has to be released within 120 days from the date on which the last of the authorization for the search was conducted. Within 120 days from the date on which, okay, if it is an explained assets, so it's not that after assessment, but it is after completion of the search, that is within 120 days from the last date of the within 120 days of the date on which the last of the authorizations of the search was executed. In this case, since the application was made to the assessing officer within 30 days of the period, amounts of an existing liability may be recovered out of the assets. Amount of an existing liability may be recovered from the assets, and the balance may be released within 120 days of the completion of the search, or we can say last of the authorization of the search under 132 was executed. Note it, and also it is actually upon a discretion of a department. So if they are not satisfied, it will be, application will be turned down, and it will be released only after assessment. So we'll read the note part. Note, it may be noted that one of the condition mentioned above release of an asset is that the nature of the source of an acquisition of an asset should be explained to the satisfaction of an assessing officer. However, in this case, it has been given that assessee application for the release of an asset explaining the source was turned down by the department. If an application was turned down by the department due to any reason, it was not satisfied with the explanation given by the assessee. So if it is not satisfied to the explanation given by the assessee, it is not satisfied by the to the department. So uh, assessee explanation given by the assessee as to the nature of the source and the acquisition of assets, then the assets in this case cannot be released. So assets will not be released since the condition mentioned about are not satisfied. Question number 8. The business premises of the Ram Bharosa Limited and the residence of the two of its director at the Delhi were searched under 132 by the DDI Delhi. The search was conducted on 9/8/2019, and the following were also seized besides other paper and record. Paper found in the drawer of an accountant relating to the Shri Krishna Limited, Mumbai. Okay, so first case, the search was concluded on 9/8/2019, and the following were also seized beside the papers and other records. So these were seized. First, paper found in the drawer of an accountant. Paper found in the drawer of an accountant, relating to the Shri Krishna Limited, Mumbai, indicating the detail of the various business transaction. However, Ram Bharosa Limited is not having any direct or indirect connection of any of the nature with these transactions and Shri Krishna Limited, Mumbai, and its director. So paper found in the drawer of an accountant of the Shri Krishna Limited, Mumbai, indicating details of various business transactions. However, Ram Bharosa is not having any direct or indirect, so there wouldn't be any consequences. We will read actually. So what action the DDI will take in respect of any seized paper relating to the Shri Krishna Limited, Mumbai. So it will be that paper, that seized paper will be considered of that in the drawer of an accountant will be considered of the Shri Krishna. So actually what they have given, what action the DDI shall be take in respect or taking in respect of any seized papers. Actually we will read the entire question, then we will one by one solve the sub parts of the question. uh, Second is jewelry worth of 5 lakh rupees from the bed of one of the bedroom of one of the director, which was claimed by him to be of his married daughter. Okay, but it will be presumed to be his own and not of his married daughter, because it is found in his possession. Paper recording certain transaction of an income and expenses having direct nexus with the business of the company for a period from 16/4/2015 to the date of this search. It was admitted by the director that the transaction recorded in such a paper have not been incorporated in the books of accounts. Okay, now so see what a question they are asking. What action did the DDI, that is the Delhi director of Delhi, was searched under dismissed by the DDI Delhi, um, shall be taking in respect of any seized paper relating to the Shri Krishna Limited, Mumbai. What action, what contention raised by the director as to the jewelry found in his bedroom will be acceptable, whether it will be acceptable, and what presumption shall be drawn in respect of any papers which indicates the transaction, indication of the transaction not recorded in the book. So what content of that books or the papers which were not recorded in the books. And last, can the company move an application for the settlement of search under chapter 10 19a of the act? So first, answer to sub part first. The authorized officer, being the DDI Delhi, is not having any jurisdiction over the Shri Krishna Limited, Mumbai. Actually the search is conducted of the Ram Bharose in this eighth question. The residence of two papers was found in the drawer of the accountant relating to the Shri Krishna Limited, Mumbai, indicating various business transactions. So the director were of the Ram Bharose, and in that they found the papers of Shri Krishna Limited. So since Shri Krishna is not falling under their jurisdiction, Mumbai, and therefore as per 132(9)(a), the paper seized relating to this company, its paper was seized, but it is not related, not in his jurisdiction, so shall be handed over by him to the assessing officer having the jurisdiction over the Shri Krishna Limited, Mumbai, within the period of 60 days from the date on which the last of the authorization of the search were executed, or after taking further necessary actions thereon. So it will be delivered to the AO having the jurisdiction over that assessee, that is over the Shri Krishna Limited, within 60 days from the last of the authorization, that is after the completion of this search. Second part, that jewelry thing, which was found in the bedroom. So what contention will be drawn of that? The contention raised by the director that will not be acceptable, because what director said is it is of her married daughter, but it will not be acceptable because as per the provision of subsection 4a I of 140 132, where any books or documents or any of the documents, money, bullion, jewelry or any other valuable found in the possession of any possession or the control of any person in the course of any search, then in respect of such it may be presumed that the same belongs to that person. So we can't assume, or we can't believe that it is of the married daughter, but it will be presumed that this belongs to the director itself. Third question, the presumption relating to the books of the papers which were not recorded in the books relating to last few years transaction. So as per 132 1 132 4a, the presumption in respect of the papers indicating the transaction not recorded in the books having direct nexus with the business of the company are that belongs to the company contended that such a paper are true and handwritten of such a paper, and the handwritten in which the same are written is or are of the person whose premises have been searched. So the content of the such a paper are true, it will be presumed to be true, and the handwritten in which the same are written, so the handwritten in which the same are written on that papers is or are of the person. So it will be assumed that it belongs to that person, is or are of the person whose premises have been searched. So it will be assumed that this documents relates to the director only. And mm, the last part, whether they can move to proceed for the settlement in this case, as per clause 3 as per clause 3 uh, 3a of explain in the explanation to 245a, the assessee can approach the settlement commission at any time after the issue of any notice under 153a or section 153c initiating the assessment proceedings. So they can move towards the settlement, they can approach the settlement at any time after the date of the issue of the notice. So once the proceeding will start under 100 by issue of notice under 153 a or c, after that they can move towards the they can go to the settlement commission. Therefore an application can be made to the settlement commission where the search has been initiated under 132, followed by the assessment under search was initiated followed by the assessment under 153 a and c. The provision of 245c 45c1 specifies the monetary limit for making an application for the settlement commission. So it is there are condition that first condition is that the assessment proceeding should have been initiated but order should not have been passed, and second, he makes a true and a fair disclosure of his return of his income uh, to the settlement commission, and that amount of the tax is must exceed 50 lakh rupees. So the same has been given that the provision to section 245c1 specifies the monetary limit for making of any application for the settlement of any case in respect of any such cases. Accordingly, the additional income tax payable on the income disclosed in the application must exceed 50 lakh rupees, so that the application for the settlement of the case is eligible for the admission, so that the assessee would be eligible for the settlement. So this amount is 50 lakh rupees. Generally it is 10 lakh, but in search case it is 50 lakh. And now the last question is in the course of the search under 100 so course of the search on 25 3 2020, assets was seized. Examine the procedure laid down to deal with the seized assets under the act. It is much simple how to deal with that is that assets will be seized with the department till the completion of an assessment under 153 a or c. After the computation of the tax or penalty which has been leviable on the assessee, the assets will be released, that is assets will be utilized for the payment of that liabilities, and the balance assets will be transferred to the assessee after the completion of an assessment. And if there is any surplus, so they will be paid an interest as well at the rate of 0.5% from starting from period after 120 days from the completion of the search till the completion of an assessment. So this this is generally the procedure of the seized assets. So this is the procedure laid down to deal with the seized assets. We will read once. Section 132B of the Income Tax Act deals with an application of an assets seized under 132. Such an assets will be first applied towards the existing liability under the provision of the Income Tax Act. That the existing liability, however, does not include any advance tax payable. So existing liability, that is previous year, current year's liability, not, it will not include advance tax payable. Simple. We had read this sentence, that is this existing provision in that existing liability does not include advances in one another answer as well above. Further, the amount of the liability determined on completion of an assessment. So amount of liability after on completion of an assessment, including any penalty or interest levied in connection with an assessment and in respect of which assessee is in default or deemed to be in default, for that amount, tax, interest, penalty on which for which he is deemed to be deemed to be default, may be recovered out of such an asset. So that asset can be utilized for the recovery of that penalty, interest and all tax payment, where the nature of any source where the nature and the source of an acquisition of an seized assets is explained. So for example, an assessee has explained the source of the seized assets because it was an uh, tax paid asset and not an unexplained asset. To the satisfaction of an assessing officer, the amount of the existing liability mentioned above may be recovered out of such an asset, and the remaining portion, if any, of the assets may be released with an prior upload of the PCIT, PCCIT and PCIT or CC, Chief Commissioner of CCIT or PCIT or CIT, as the case may be. The release may be made within 120 days from the date on which the last of the authorizations of this search was made under 132, or for the requisition under 132A was executed. So this part is for the explained assets. What will be how it will be dealt with. The assets would be released to a person from the from whose custody they were seized. So it will be written only to those person from whose custody they were seized. When the assets consist solely of the money or partly money and the partly of other assets, assessing officer may apply such money in discharge of the liability referred to in para 1 above, and the assessee shall be discharge assessee and the assessee shall be discharged of the such a liability to the extent money is so applied. However, assets other than the money may be applied for the discharge of the liability, of course. So if money is fell short, so the assets will be sold to pay off the liability. So if assets other than money may be applied for the discharge of a liability, if the complete assessment could not recover, could not be made from the money, recovery could not be made from the money seized, and the money seized was not sufficient. So if the money and asset both were seized, so if money wasn't sufficient to pay off the liabilities, so assets can be sold off, that is can be applied for the discharge of such liability. The assets can be used for the discharge. So we are with this we had completed our exercise part as well. This is significant cases. Okay, thank you for watching the video.